some brief anticipation on the status of preparation of the Fit for 55 package that will also revise another important area, which is the one related to the energy package. So without losing too much time, I would like to give the word to Clara. Thank you very much again for being with us, Clara, and the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much to Massimo and to Torivar for inviting us here today. And I love the title of this session, 1 hour with Europe. That's fantastic. So simple and so good. So thank you. This is the session today is certainly timely for the reasons that Massimo mentioned. We have just, a couple of months ago, adopted a strategy for climate adaptation. But as you know, there has been a couple of weeks ago, a political agreement for the climate law. And in the climate law, there are many things which are not subject of today's discussion, but there is a specific emphasis on adaptation. We are used to speak a lot about mitigation of climate change, but adaptation is very important. And this climate law also refers to that. So thank you for this opportunity. You know that our fight for against this climate change, against the biodiversity crisis, requires us to avoid the worst and be prepared for the unavoidable. Because as we know, unfortunately, even if we stopped emitting tomorrow, we will still be facing the effects of our past emissions. Not only that, we know that the climate crisis and the effects, the damages created by climate change affects every place in Europe. We'll talk about the world afterwards, but every place in Europe. It doesn't distinguish between rich and poor, east, west, north, and south. It's for everyone. In 2019, the summer heat wave cost 2,500 European lives. You might say that in this unfortunate moment of pandemics, this is not a lot, but this is a lot. And this is the event, the deadliest event provoked by climate change. Let us remember one thing which is interesting as well, is that in the heat wave that we had in 2004, 2005, something like this, there we had 30,000 deaths in Europe. So it means that even if we are not yet there, since then, some measures were taken, so and we see the dimension of the problem. 30,000 deaths now to 2,500. We know as well that everywhere in Europe we are having unprecedented forest fires, heat waves above the Arctic Circle, devastating droughts in the Mediterranean region, hurricanes, you name it, bark beetles in central and outbreaks in Central and Eastern Europe. So climate change is happening today. It's having its effect today, and we have to make sure that we build a resilient tomorrow. Let us not forget that apart from all these very visible events like fires, droughts, etc., floods, there are also slow onset events such as desertification, loss of biodiversity, land and ecosystem degradation, ocean acidification, or sea level rise, which are equally destructive over the long term. So the strategy that the Commission adopted last February will help the European Union not only to become climate neutral, but also to become climate resilient by 2050. It will, and with this strategy, we say that we have adaptation which will be smarter, swifter, more dynamic, and with a new focus on international climate diplomacy. What do we mean when we say that we are making an adaptation smarter? We know that we need to have more data collection and data sharing, which is very important as in this realm of research and technology, as you know very well. With, for example, more precise modeling on future hazards, farmers can better plan the crops they plant, families can plan better where they buy or build a house, knowing the climate risks that they will be facing. Businesses will know how to make new production facilities fit for a hotter planet, and cities will know how to protect the residents from weather extremes. Also, with better data, with and sharing data, we will also be better monitoring the health effects of the climate crisis. And as you know, we have launched together with the European Environment Agency, the Climate Health Observatory, which is precisely trying to monitor and spread knowledge and be the basis for policies which are addressing this interlinkage between health and crime. So that was for the smarter adaptation, more data, hard data that can help us act. We say also that this strategy adopts a more systemic approach, because we know that adaptation solutions have to take place at the local, at the regional level. So tailored advice, especially for the most vulnerable communities, is of utmost importance. And we need, therefore, to plan, to collect the expertise needed for that, to plan for the strategies, and of course find the resources for action. And this links very well with what we're going to talk afterwards about the mission on climate adaptation. So we are going to promote nature-based solutions as much as possible. Think of when we are protecting and restoring the wetlands or developing more green spaces. You've seen probably the outcome of a recent survey in among European citizens saying that they want greener cities. One of the good things about adaptation, it has collateral positive effects. For example, it helps in improving, preserving biodiversity. Also, it helps in cleaning the quality of our air and in cooling our cities. So there is only good things when you do climate adaptation. There is an aspect that is sometimes forgotten, which is from a systemic perspective, which is the impact of climate change on the fiscal policies, because extreme weather events alone can cause an average of 12 billion euros a year in losses, which is a huge amount of money. And the climate change effects also affects to 40% of European GDP that is generated in coastal areas where we have 40% of our population living as well. And therefore, I don't need to be explicit on the impacts that these damages do have on the public resources. Therefore, one of the things we are doing in the strategy is precisely having a dialogue with the member states on the impacts of climate in public finance, and helping them to design a more climate-proof fiscal frame. The third element of this, the third characteristic of this strategy is that we're making adaptation faster, because we need to gap quickly the bridge between the planning and the implementation of that plans of adaptation. So we are working, among others, but very importantly, with the European Investment Bank to boost adaptation financing. We are also working very closely with the insurance sector, because as we know, the climate protection gap across Europe is still very high. So the difference between what is insured and the actual financial losses is quite big. And very often these losses these disasters fall on uninsured families, and very often in the less favorable parts of the population. So we need as well to make adaptation faster, to deploy, scale up and deploy innovation solutions that can make our system more resilient, and that will make both the private and the public sector work together. And here comes in the development and the deployment of innovative solutions comes very much the New Horizon Europe mission on adaptation. We have also to speed up, with the mind of speeding up the climate adaptation. We will be speeding up action by helping to reduce climate risk through the expansion of our climate proofing guidelines that you know that we published some months ago, beyond just the new infrastructure and not only for EU funding. We are working on that, and we are working the development of the first EU-wide climate risk assessment. And the fourth characteristic of this strategy is that it has more emphasis than the past one at the international level, because we want, but we know that the problem is from the whole world, that's no question about that. But the same as we want to lead, we, the European Union, want to lead in climate mitigation, we want as well to match our leadership in climate adaptation. Because let us not forget that the Paris Agreement also established a global goal on adaptation, and very importantly highlighted adaptation as a key contributor to sustainable development. The climate impacts outside our borders are a problem for those that are outside our borders, but are also having an effect on the European Union. This is why we will promote subnational, national, or regional approaches to adaptation in other parts of the world, and we will be putting a special focus on adaptation in Africa and with the small island developing states. So we will try to increase the support for international climate resilience and preparedness through provision of resources, scaling up international finance, and all in all through a stronger global engagement in these matters, and making climate adaptation a full part of our climate diplomacy. And for that, the same as for mitigation, we have to ally our forces with our main partners. Let's not forget that we are doing this as well in the ramp up towards the COP in Glasgow, where adaptation we have to show that we are living up to our responsibilities and that we are prepared to continue working and leading on that front. For today's audience, I think that the role of research and innovation is of particular importance, and as you have seen, the role of research and innovation is a very important part throughout our strategy. So for better informed decision making and scaling up adaptation solutions, we have been co-designing, working together between those that are working mainly the adaptation strategy and those colleagues working in research and innovation, namely in the planned Horizon Europe mission. One and the other, the mission is one of the places where both climate and research and innovation policies meet. Therefore, they are totally mutually reinforcing. And I have the honor and the pleasure to have been asked to be the mission manager. And therefore, I find myself quite privileged to have this opportunity to work precisely in this crossroads. The mission we can discuss that afterwards more if you want in detail, but we'll be supporting the strategy by testing and upscaling innovative solutions, also making sure that we have the good enabling conditions for a deep societal and economic transformation. And at the end of the day, also the mission will be supporting the deployment of what is called now deep demonstrators, precisely to achieve climate resilience. We want to mobilize through the mission, to mobilize research and innovation across the whole value chain and addressing the full adaptation cycle and delivering on the ground the solutions that are needed. We'll be supporting regions and communities in different stages of maturity in different ways. We can come back to that because it's being discussed, but I can perhaps we can discuss a little bit later. And as you know, there are 5 missions, 4 of them working for the Green Deal, plus the one on cancer, and we're all of us working on the implementation plan. So I think it is clear to all of us that there is urgency to act, that research and innovation are at the core of the decision making in climate adaptation, but also at the core of the solution. And the warnings from the scientific community, the increased visibility of the climate change impacts, and the recovery of the pandemic will make that all these things fit together, and we have to seize this opportunity. So much for time being for the adaptation strategy. You invited me to address a couple of words about the package Fit for 55, and I will do so gladly. So we all remember that climate change and climate neutrality by 2050, our main objective. Then we said to ourselves, with the current framework, legislative framework for 2030, we will never get there. Therefore, we have to reinforce our ambition and increase the ambition of increase the reduction of emissions by 2030 by at least 55%, reducing 55% the emissions when we compare to 1990 level. And there we are, then what we had to do is to revise all the legislation of all the legislation that has an effect on where we are getting in 2030. So the Commission is preparing a package to implement precisely this 2030 target, is why it is called Fit for 55. And we'll be revising and proposing legislation on the ETS. ETS will be the Emission Trading System. As you know, it's at the core of the climate policy. And there we will be expanding it to the maritime sector, as the Commission had announced, including at least the intra-EU emissions. We are looking at the possibilities and the appropriateness and the modalities to expand ETS to sectors like the buildings and the road transport. And we are looking at the question of auctioning, reduction of free allowances, things like that. And we are adapting also the ETS system to make CORSIA, the International United Nations system, let us say, for a reduction of emissions in aviation. We are also making the necessary hooks for those systems to work well together. So that's one thing on ETS. Then we are also revising the effort sharing regulation. Remember, the regulation that asks directly in a number of sectors, ask the member states to reduce their emissions, and this percentage of the reduction, these efforts, this is why it's called effort sharing, depends on a number of parameters, among others the GDP. We are also looking at the so-called LULUCF regulation. So it's a regulation that looks at land use change and forestry regulation to make it more ambitious, more stringent, and going beyond the neutrality point where we are today. We will also, because as we know very well, 70% of the emissions come from the energy sector, and therefore we'll be revising the Energy Efficiency Directive as well as the Renewable Energy Directive. This is being done by our colleagues in DG Ener. We ourselves will be tightening the CO2 emissions performance standards for both cars and vans. Remember that we had set them up not a long time ago, but it was foreseen to revise them, and they are necessary. It is necessary to revise them. They have shown their effect, and so we are tightening them. I mean, the Commission most likely will propose tightening them, even if, I mean, this is having the CO2 standards for cars and vans is not dependent on whether we eventually propose ETS going to the road for the road transport or not. I mean, the CO2 standards will be there and whatever happens. And then we have two other initiatives which are being, pieces of legislation which are being worked out by our colleagues in DG Tax. One is revising the Energy Taxation Directive, and the other is the creation ex novo of the so-called Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, which, for those that might have forgotten, is a tool that will allow us to make sure that our trading partners are up to the same climate ambition as the Union. And in case this is not the case, then an adjustment mechanism in the border will be applied for import. So it's not a protection mechanism; it's a mechanism which motivates our partners to be ambitious. Implementing all this new legislation will have a number of benefits that we have been evaluating, that we are finalizing the evaluation in the impact assessments. We'll have certainly cleaner energy, we'll have improved energy security, and we'll be increasing our savings in imported energy. We will be having cleaner public transport and less pollution. We will have better living conditions and savings in the healthcare. We will have, very importantly, new green, local, and more added value jobs. And for an audience like this one, I hope this sounds music, because we have always been saying that it is with innovation, with research, that we are going to make as well better jobs. We will have overall a more modernized, a more modern and resilient economy. We'll have lower energy bills. We will have certainly, we will leave a lesser burden to the future generations. So that's the whole spirit of the la lettre of the package we are preparing. I'll stop there for now, and glad to discuss it for anything that I can help with. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Clara, for this comprehensive picture of the work done and the enormous amount of work that the Commission is going to do in the next months to come, because the amount of things that you are going to revise and rediscuss and propose looks really, really large. I would like to just announce that now we are going to have the next half hour with Clara for you, with Mrs. De La Torre, for you to ask her question. To do it, you have just to put your name in the Q&A box. So click there and put your name, and I will give the word to the one of you that would like to reserve for the questions. You will get the possibility to have your microphone and camera open. So feel free to reserve your right to ask a question to Mrs. De La Torre directly on the Q&A. Before I start taking the question, which I notice are already starting to come, I would like to have the privilege to do the first one. And basically, I read the communication, of course, and I noticed that the communication on climate change adaptation looks like a very comprehensive one, and very, how can I say, it looks like a sort of umbrella strategy on all the political strategies that have been launched as of now. I noticed that the Commission is going to implement also an approach to make sure that whatever is going to be issued by the Commission is in line also with the need that you mentioned about Europe to become climate resilient and so to be in line with the climate adaptation needs. So my question as an R&I representative is, do we have to expect this approach about asking as a menu of everything that is going to be issued in the strategic terms, including projects, to also be aligned with climate adaptation needs, meaning that in the future, in the calls for proposals or in the way we have to present our projects, we have also to address their compatibility to the climate adaptation needs that the Commission is now trying to focus in order to create a climate resilient Europe?
Thank you, Massimo. That's not an easy one, but it's an important one, however. So I do not think I'll develop now, but to give you the short answer, I do not think in every project we are going to ask for an adaptation plan d'action or something like this. No, I do not think so. But we are going anyhow to do two things. One, as you know, there is a 35% of the framework program that needs to be allocated to climate mitigation or adaptation, climate-friendly actions. And what do we do there is that my colleagues go to, and colleagues in the research as well, we do that together, and see where are all the subjects and the topics that are being put out for calls, and make sure that the climate dimension is there. Needless to say that there are a couple of clusters, cluster 5, where we have climate, but there we have climate, energy, and transport. There we are very, very mindful of what are we doing about climate. Certainly in cluster 6 with food, agriculture, environment, resources. But we are also very present in the discussions in cluster 4, where we have, on the one hand, the digital aspects, and we say, and we mean it, that the green and digital transformations are twin transformations. They are mutually reinforcing. So there we are very present. And also we have the industrial technologies there in that cluster. And we know how important it is to deal with climate in the hard to abate sectors. Therefore, we are very present there. In other clusters, we are present, but we are. I mean, it's by definition a little bit to a little bit lesser extent. However, when we are looking in whatever cluster to socioeconomic research, for example, and in particular, I think it's cluster 2, where we have a lot there. It is clear that we have to make sure that the change of mindset, the behavioral aspects, the behavioral science that is needed for the transformation, both for mitigation and adaptation, has to be there. When we are talking about whatever hard technology, we have to be sure that what we are designing does have climate resilience in the design. The PVs, the eolian, and all this, they are certainly solutions for mitigation, but they have to embed the approach to adaptation. So yes, present. I do not think there will be a formal request to every project to address it formally separately.
Yeah, of course, I was not expecting every project to have this kind of things, but I think that this raises the importance of life cycle assessment, for example, as an ingredient that could make sense to consider, especially when you somehow develop new products and you have to demonstrate that they are sustainable. I would like to start the questions. I noticed that we have a first person which asked to intervene, so I would like to give the floor to Paul Frisvold. Paul, can you open your camera and introduce yourself?
Yes, hello, and thank you for a very interesting presentation. This is a very bold and ambitious plan that the Commission has for the Fit for 55. And I was just wondering if you could comment on some of the criticism that, or the comments that have been made with regard to the timing, because if the package will be presented now in June, and then we would have probably a couple of years in the Parliament and the Council, there is very little time from where the new acquis will be adopted until its goals have to be reached. So that's the one broad question. And then obviously the carbon border adjustment mechanism is on everybody's lips. My question might be too detailed, or maybe you cannot say anything at this point, but from a Norwegian perspective, we are obviously very keen to learn a little bit behind the mechanism, because will it be a carbon border mechanism within the context of the customs union, or will it be more than in the ETS domain? Because Norway is part of the internal market, we take over all the key, but we are not part of the customs union. And that has posed, for instance, a problem for us now with battery production that have specific criteria for input to electric vehicles being exported from the EU to the UK and vice versa. So the dilemma about the customs union is of interest to us. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The CBAM, the carbon border mechanism, I'm sorry I cannot reply to your question on whether it's the customs or the ETS realm. I have not thought of that, but I will make sure I will find out, and I'd rather for this, in general, I'd rather not invent. I prefer to tell you I don't know. I find out, and if I am allowed, I will tell you, because the thing is being prepared. On the timing, you didn't say, because you were kind enough, but I understood you meant we're a bit late. Now, what I can tell you is that, this college arrived 1.5 years ago. And in the first 100 days, we proposed the Green Deal, we proposed the climate law, and in less than 1 year, we made all the impact assessment for 2030. And in 1.5 years, we're doing, there are hundreds, I was going to say thousands, I don't know, but hundreds, certainly more than 1,000 pages of impact assessment, which is, I assure you, is not blah, blah. There are very deep analysis, models, options. So it was materially impossible to come earlier. Yes, it is true, you are right, that the scientific community has been alerting since a long time that we have to move, And I would like to insist on what our Executive Vice President, Mr. Timmermans, says often. Yes, we have little time, but still not too late yet, so let us rush. So yes, we cannot drag our feet. So I'm confident that the same as the Commission will be in time, as it has been presenting its proposals. I'm confident that the co-legislators, the Parliament and the Council, we will also be, I'm sure they will be speedy in their co-decisions for even these difficult things.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have another question. I would like to open the microphone and camera of Michaela Ashan. Michaela, can you also introduce yourself and your affiliation?
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Michaela Askan. I'm professor at UIT, the Arctic University of Tromsø. I have recently been coordinating an EU project called Climefish, and we had a sister project called Ceres. Both projects were working on climate adaptation in fisheries and aquaculture, but both freshwater and marine. And there are several outcomes from these projects that certainly would help in the work that you are doing. So I would just like to list, for instance, that we developed a standard for how to make climate adaptation plans in fisheries and aquaculture. That guideline may also be adapted to be used, for instance, for forestry, as we are discussing now with the Arctic Network in Finland and Sweden and Denmark. So there are a few tools and also some impact assessment made and done previously, because as you said, we are in a hurry, but the Commission was really early to announce this call already 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So, and the Commission asked us to develop these tools to make the industry able to adapt. And I want to draw your attention to several impact assessments made in these projects. So my question is, and this is just one example, so as the Commission has already done a lot, how on earth do you manage to collect all this information and all these rather well-developed exploitable outcomes, tools, decision support tools, other things that should be available for you just now? And I think that at least we found the Climate Adapt platform very useful and try to make things available there. But it's only if it's applied in the real world that we can really get things uploaded there. So if it's a tool that we advise that hasn't yet been implemented, it's not available for you on Climate Adapt. So kind of how do we ensure that all the knowledge that we already produced is there as Lego blocks for the work further, that we ensure that we use it and don't spend money in repeating our exercise?
Thank you, Michaela.
Thank you. This is an important question, and this is not only a question in climate adaptation, which is the case, but it's everywhere. You are right in saying that we have to make sure that we have with us the results of the projects that we are funding or not funding. It doesn't matter. The results of investment in research and innovation. And it's interesting what you tell me about the Climate Adapt platform. I'm going to revise that, but one thing I can tell you is that in the work that we do with our colleagues in the agencies, executive agencies that manage the projects, we have a number of feedback mechanisms. For on the one hand, we put them questions, let us say, questions that as policy shapers we need to reply to, and they feed us with either on replying to our questions or on things that they find as results of projects relevant to us. So we have some feedback mechanisms with the agencies where we do that. But I was going to tell you that the Climate Adapt is a fantastic window for these sort of things. I will say, because there is another place where you can make yourselves known. That didn't say it properly. Where you can render more visible and therefore usable the results of your work, which is in the Climate Pact. In the Climate Pact, we are also putting in place where we have having a sort of knowledge hub, which we are not reinventing ourselves, as you can well imagine, but trying to guide people to different tools precisely to manage climate change. So it would be good if you could have a look as well to our Climate Pact. But thank you, that's important.
Thank you, Clara, for this answer. Meanwhile, that we are waiting for other questions to come, I would like to also make an extra question on my side. You mentioned that you are going to become the manager of the climate mission, if I understood correctly. And I'm wondering, given the fact that the mission will be asked to somehow integrate each other, if your mission will have a sort of what is the right word to be said, a sort of overarching role to the other, because basically you are very transversal, I suspect. And again, given the approach that the communication is having and the importance of climate adaptation and resilience, I have the impression that your mission could really be a sort of driving force in the way the others are going to align with this. Do you expect this to happen, or do you expect a more balanced approach among the mission? Of course, I'm asking you to look in the crystal ball, but I don't know if you can elaborate on what do you think could happen given the importance of the topic that you are going to address through this mission.
I would say that yes, I am already the mission manager. So what we are busy, all of us, the 5 mission managers are deputies. In my case, the deputy is John Bell, my colleague director in DG Research, that you all know very well. And he had started the work by the way, so credits to all the work that he had done until now. So we are 5 sisters or brothers missions, which we are a family. I wouldn't say there is one father, mother, and then we are all brothers and sisters, and we are all making sure that our missions cohabitate in a civilized and productive way. There are, as you say, the adaptation has the nature of adaptation being so horizontal, there are issues certainly in the soils mission, in the oceans mission, and not least in the cities mission. And with the cities is the one where we are more connected because some of the actors, and I hope that many of the actors of the cities mission will also be actors in the adaptation mission. So yes, we try to we talk to each other, and we try to make things as coherent as possible. But we are brothers and sisters.
Brothers and sisters, yeah, that's a good sentence. So we like each other very much. I have another. I would like to remind to the people that they can reserve a question by simply writing their name in the Q&A box. Meanwhile, I have requested for a question from Turivar Eitos. Turivar.
Yes, and also from my side, thank you very much, Clara. This has been very useful. You mentioned speed. And well, we see that from the college, as you mentioned, we see new regulations, new strategies coming. If you look at the work program and the strategic plan for Horizon Europe, it has been evolving over quite a long time. Has it managed to keep up with this speed of the college, of the policy development? And do you have any suggestions for the applicants? Now they are starting now to prepare proposals on how they should deal with this, or another way you could say, has the strategic plan and the work program managed to keep up with the speed that you have on the policy directive side? Thank you.
Yes, I would say yes. It is true that we've been working on that as an institution, and in DG Climate we've been participating in that as well since quite a long time. But precisely knowing that these things take time, and since anyhow we couldn't launch the course pending the actual co-decision, which was very recently, so everything is ready to start. And one of the reasons that why we are rushing ourselves in the missions to get our I'll come in a second to say what's the process for the missions now for them to help it. But why we are rushing now is precisely to be in time for the first work program to be updated and take into consideration the missions. The work programs as I think it was just the previous speaker, the lady, I'm very bad at names, I'm sorry, Michael, I think she was called. She said that the Commission had foreseen a number of things some years ago. So the work programs of Horizon have to foresee, to have a forward looking, because whatever we would need now, if we launch it in a work program now, we don't have the results. So the speed of the legislation is gone. But thanks to the fact that there was already work on risk assessment, there was already a lot of work on CO2s for the cars. There was work on many of the issues on which we are legislating. I think the institution is keeping more or less the path. I must say as well, and it cannot be otherwise, that we do not only rely on the results of we get at Horizon Europe. We know very well that there are many other sources of good knowledge in the European Union, and which we use as well. No? But so in a nutshell, yes, they keep with us. We keep pushing for what we see will be needing for the regulations in the future. And they themselves have also a role in opening our minds and telling us, start thinking of this because this will come, you know, so it's two-sided. If you want a word on for all of us to know, because the missions have been planned, but they do not formally exist yet. So I am a manager of something that doesn't really exist yet, because as you know, the group of commissioners chaired by Executive Vice President Vestager said some months ago, okay, these are very good ideas, okay, but I don't see things well crafted yet. So you launch them, but come in early summer, give us our implementation plans, and then we, group of commissioners, we will be deciding in June, July, whether we go ahead or no with those missions, and therefore liberating the resources in Horizon Europe, which I must remind ourselves that the resources in Horizon Europe foreseen for the missions are seed money. There are other sources of funding that have to come along, not least the regional, but as well the private when we want to. So we are now working in implementation plans, doing peer reviews and assessment by the central services, so that hopefully in the case of adaptation and of all the 5 missions, we have a green light from the group of commissioners in late June, beginning of July.
Interesting. Because, of course, as you said, we are all friends, but governance here looks to be one of the key issues. And what I was wondering is the strategy is very comprehensive and touch upon many aspects. But I suspect that you need a sort of coordination, overall coordination that ensures that everything is running in parallel. So, apart from being all good friends or good cousins and so on, who is the DG in charge of this overall coordination? Is it yours or it is a shared responsibility?
So the adaptation strategy, the lead service is DG Climate. So everybody,
okay.
But the adaptation for the mission is something that we do jointly, digital research and ourselves.
Yeah, no, I was looking for the adaptation strategy because it looks like a very broad and complex task, honestly.
Indeed, it's DG Climate, but there is contribution from many DGs. There's contribution from research, certainly, from our colleagues in DG ECFIN, from our colleagues of regional policy, from many other DGs, absolutely. But this, let us say DG Climate, it's DG Climate leading.
Oh, so you have some complex things to manage in the future, Clara.
We are not bored. We are not bored.
We have another question from Maximilian Herzog. Maximilian, can you also introduce yourself and open your cam?
Yeah, thanks for this really interesting discussion. My name is Maximilian. I'm a student actually of political science, but I'm also a coordinator of the Withdraw the Cap campaign. So coming from the climate movement, but now like also researching how emissions are embedded in European policy making. And you mentioned, Clara, thanks for your introduction, the Fit for 55 package. And me personally, but also our movement is really interested in how this is gonna address agriculture emissions, because you mentioned the ETS or the ESD, and you actually also mentioned the land use change and forestry sector that you're gonna address. But of course, like agriculture emissions are separated from that. So I'd really like to know how you're trying in the coming years with your strategy to address these emissions, because as the Commission knows as well, I've been in many meetings with Commission representatives, what is happening now in the common agriculture policy making will not be enough to achieve climate neutrality by 2050. Thank you.
Maximilian, thank you. And we have to, again, as Executive Vice President Timmermans says often, we have to be grateful for young people like you and many others who, because he says often, I'm not quite sure the Green Deal would have arrived at that date with that power if we had not had the encouragement from the young people. So thank you for that. On the agriculture, The Commission presented a proposal which was trying to embed the greening of the agriculture. And the only thing I can tell you is that our hope is that the co-legislators keep that balance in. There is not more that I can tell you. It's out of our hands, and we do our bons office, as we say, in the trialogues to make sure that this happens. But we have, as you refer to, the so-called LULUCF regulation, and we have something that is in the political agreement of the climate law, which is, okay, you're going to get to climate neutrality by 2050, but make sure that you are going to reduce the emissions, and you are not only counting on absorptions. This is where they have capped the absorptions, and you know what it means also in terms of agriculture. So hopefully, I'm confident that all these things will fit together, and we have to remind ourselves that climate policy, climate action, is whether linked to agriculture or linked to any other part of the economy, is not a burden. It is a framework condition, let us say, but is an opportunity for business and for citizens to have a better life. And this is something that sometimes we forget, and we have to remind ourselves.
Thank you. Clara, an easy question from my side. Will we make it? Will we reach the objectives?
Yes, we will make it. We'll make it. It will not be easy. It will not be easy. But I think we're in a moment where there is the political determination, where there is social demand, where you, the world of research and innovation, are putting everything there so that we have the necessary solutions. And let us not forget that we are in a moment with this horrible pandemic, but there is this little light there, which is the whole renovation, resilience and renovation package, recovery, sorry, not renovation, which is once in a generation opportunity to make sure that, as we say, we build back better. So yes, we will get there, but we need some effort. Can I ask you something, Massimo, yourself and everyone in this conference, to whom I'm grateful, by the way, is that come along and have a look at the climate pact that I have referred to some time ago, and please try to become either a climate ambassador or do a pledge, either individual, take a commitment, either individual or your organization, and help us in making precisely this happen in the future.
That's a good suggestion, and I think that everyone now is Googling how to become a climate ambassador for the European Commission. And I'm wondering, Clara, before closing, if we can even consider to link this with the new European Bauhaus initiative that somehow is linked also to partly sustainability issues, and the Commission recently launched it. And just for you to know, NTNU just become a partner into the initiative, so we are also going to promote the new European Bauhaus. And somehow there are colleagues connected here that are involved that maybe can also take this as an inspiration for possible themes of these events and co-design processes that we have to do in order to engage citizens, because you mentioned correctly that it's very important to spread the culture and to make sure that everyone is thinking in the right direction to create a climate resilient and prepared Europe to climate change. Given that, I would like to ask to Ivareikos to maybe have a little closure from his side before my final regards. Tur.
Yeah, thank you. And very short from me, thank you so much, Clara. This has been very useful for us, and we certainly appreciate that you have been willing to share all this insight and very useful information for us, both for us present in Brussels, but looking at the attendance list, we have guests from all over Europe and a number of stakeholders from ministries and interest organizations. So this is very useful. So on behalf of the NORCOR office, thank you so much, Clara. Over to you, Massimo.
Thank you, Ivar.
And of course, Clara, on behalf of NTNU, University, Norwegian University of Science and Technology, would like to thank you very, very much for this very interesting presentation. I think you gave us a lot of good information and insight, and from my point of view, also a lot of inspiration on how to read the future initiative that the Commission is going to issue, because I will know that there is a sort of umbrella vision that now drives them, especially for what concerns climate. That is, of course, one of the main strategic areas, even for my university. So we are very keen in working in a sustainable manner and introduce sustainability in every action where this is meaningful to be done. So given that, I would like to thank you very, very much for your kind availability, Clara. It was great to have you here, and hope to meet you in person soon.
Yeah.
That's of course my hope.
Thank you very much, Massimo and Doriva. Thank you, and Olgor. And thanks to all the audience for having me here. It was great for me as well. So hope to meet you soon.
Okay.
Have a nice evening.
Bye, everybody, and see you
Goodbye.
at the next 1 hour with Europe appointment.
Bye. Thank you. Stay with Europe.